Hi, my name's leowt, and you have found your way to the Conversations podcast. Conversations exist to create spiritually minded conversations about life. We desire to create safe space for dialogue and community. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to generate conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. Everyone is welcome at the conversation.
Friends, how are you? It is leowt here for Conversations. You might notice that we're on a little bit different of a setup this time. We're actually going live from my personal page as opposed to the Conversations page. But there's been a lot of activity recently on my page in particular and in the Olean area in particular. And I thought the reach of my page might be a little bit more appropriate for this conversation. So if you haven't listened to Conversations before, this is the professional shtick that you get every week when I broadcast. But Conversations is a safe space for spiritually minded conversation about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. And the main tenet is that absolutely everybody is welcome at the conversation. So this is what I do on a weekly basis. This is what I, trap my friends into doing with me on a weekly basis. And this is the pastoral work that I find myself engaging in at the moment. And I wanted to invite everybody in Facebook land into this conversation because there's a lot of very tangible things happening right now, particularly in Olean, that involve fractured interfaith relationships, or perhaps I'm not even going to say fractured because in a lot of ways they've never been fostered. And I feel like that's a true travesty. And I feel like it's an injustice. And so I know a lot of people want to pigeonhole me as the LGBTQ person, but I need the whole world, all 7 of you that are surely watching at this moment. I just want folks to know that I'm actually the human rights person. And I believe that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And it's my position, or it's my mandate as a person of certain privileges in this world. And as a person who, somewhat regrettably comes from the Christian tradition, it's my job to actively stand up and hold space and engage in conversations that the world needs to become a better place. So today I have asked 2 of my friends here to speak with me, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves real quick. So whoever wants to go first, just say your name and who you are and maybe why I roped you into this.
Go ahead, Saad.
Sure. My name's Saad Mirza. I graduated Olean High School in 2017, and I grew up in the Olean area. Leo and I were talking recently about some recent Islamophobia that sort of surfaced in the area, and just had a really good conversation about his background as a Christian minister and trying to expose and talk about these interfaith discussions. And I was really excited to join and hop on.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it, Saad.
My name is Angela. I'm joining today as a person who grew up in the Christian faith, actually, and reverted to Islam in 2015. And I would like to speak on many different subjects today. I'm happy to be here.
I've been badgering Angela, but I lovingly badgering Angela because I feel like honestly, Angela is a great person, and interacting with her has challenged me to grow as a human. And there's nothing more that I appreciate than people that challenge me to level up. Right? Because as a human, I'm always going to have blind spots. And one of them was sort of a blindness to the privilege that I have as a person who comes from a Christian background. And to be clear, my name's leowt. You guys know me as a hairdresser and as kind of a guy that talks a lot. But here's the thing. This is actually kind of my 4th coming out in a way. I am actually a Christian pastor by training and by trade. That's been a large portion of my employment history. That's what my professional history has been, and that's where my education lies. I have a bachelor's of science in pastoral ministry with a concentration in Bible, not something practical like interpreting the Bible or teaching the Bible, just straight Bible. And my concentration was in church growth and development. Furthermore, I'm undertaking my master's of arts in religious studies with a concentration in interreligious studies at the moment, and I have my eye on a PhD PhD in theology. And so a lot of people don't know this, but this is actually absolutely the conversation that I have professional credibility to speak on. And so as someone who kind of finds themselves on the fringes, even of Christianity, I think it's important to have these conversations. And so I appreciate everybody for coming. Before we go any further too, I need to make one statement clear. And this is a really important statement, is that frequently when someone comes out from a minority or marginalized position, they are assumed to be the voice of that population. And I think it's important to note that there are as many views of Islam as there are Muslim individuals. And so I don't want to perpetuate the idea that there is a singular voice of Islam. I want the world to engage this conversation with the understanding that there are as many views of Islam as there are Muslim individuals, and as there is with Christianity, and as there is with Catholicism, and as there is with Judaism. But I think a lot of times people like to pigeonhole or put a lot of weight on people who are willing to speak up, and I'm trying to in some way mitigate that weight for both Angela and Saad. So Angela, I know you have a lot of thoughts going into this. Do you want to start us off, or what's burning at your mind here?
Well, just about what you just said, because I've kind of fought with myself about that specific, that thing right there, that statement, because first of all, I'm really still a baby Muslim, right? It's been 6 years, but I didn't grow up in that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of practicing alone. You know, I'm the head of my own family still. I also am not living in a Muslim society either. You know, so what I'm doing things to the best of my ability, but I am in no way, shape, or form a scholar. I have definitely not studied or read everything there is to know, or even half of what there is to know. So I don't want anyone ever, I fear that I'm going to do something wrong and people are then going to judge Islam based on something I've done. You know, so that has been my fear in this area, actually. I have thought something really stupid. I've thought, oh my goodness, what if I'm on the highway and I'm like doing 75 because I'm late for work, and they're like, yep, I told you, I knew it. Look at them Muslims.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I fear things like that because we are human. Absolutely. And this is something, I'm going to go sideways just for a quick second. This is something I was thinking about. That is the difference between a leader and someone who's just a person who is of some faith, right? So when you're a leader and you're out there spewing certain things that you know you are leading people, right? And you're telling them, hey, someone is outside the government of God. Someone is in need of deliverance. Okay, well, if I'm just any Joe walking down the street, you're okay, shut up, walk away. But no, I'm a leader. That's what makes the difference. And not only am I a leader of you as a congregation, I am a leader of these people I am talking about over here in a whole different area, you know, of the school system.
Yeah. I think that's an incredibly salient point in this conversation, because no one in the onus of theological proof should never rest on one person's interpretation, right? But when you step into a leadership role, I love Spider-Man, so we're gonna use a quote from that. But like, with great power comes great responsibility. Then I think that when you are in fact a community leader, and if you embrace the idea of truly being a pastor or a spiritual leader, your actions have far-reaching consequences. And as a leader and a public person, you're always responsible for the negative space of what happens because of what you say. And I think that that's something that needs to be a conversation, you know what I mean? Because there is very real, very hateful things coming out of Christian pulpits locally. And I say that as someone who's criticizing my own people, you know what I mean? And I think that there is a very real difference between someone who just practices the faith and then someone who purports to be an expert in it.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts, Saad? I could see your wheels like turning.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just thinking.
Just engaging, right? I think that's really important because, you know, really the issue that brought us here, it's about something that one person said, but I think it exposes a greater issue, which is a system and a belief structure that's perpetuated by those types of words, right? And so for anyone who's watching that may not be aware, there was recently a sermon that was published by someone who was duly employed as both a pastor and a principal of a public school system in Olean. I'm not using names because I don't feel that this is about a person. I feel this is a systemic issue. But this sermon included speech that Muslims and LGBTQ people and Democrats and people with mental illness issues are outside of the government of God. Furthermore, it went on to say that people with mental health issues are dealing with possession. And then the sermon also included a little stint about how praying for the enemy's mouths to sewn shut and lips to be stitched or something. And so there's a lot of conflations happening here in terms of the people that are supposed to be, you know, outside of the government of God or by default evil, and then what you want done to evil people. And it's harmful because fundamentally, I would have to say that Muslims are decidedly inside the government of God. Like Allah is simply another word for God. And I'm not trying to gloss over our differences, but I am trying to point out our similarities.
Mm-hmm.
How does it sit with you, Angela, as you know, as a parent in the school district? And next we'll come to you, Saad, as you know, a former consumer in the school district and younger person. We'll start with Angela. How do these comments sit with you as someone who is both an Olean resident and a Muslim? Because you're not the only one, you know.
They were extremely inflammatory. So honestly, it reminded me of the beginning of like this 4-year reign of Trump. Because what it did was it brought out like all of these people who were kind of closeted in their hate, right? It brought them out and made them believe that it was okay to continue to have those feelings, to continue to like breed that in their children. And to hear it again from someone who you think is supposed to be portraying love. And not only that, it bothers me more that that specific person was a leader of children, local children, the community. He claims to love all of these kids. He's mentoring these kids. They all look up to him. You know, he said in one breath that he loves people. And, you know, what really bothered me was knowing that this was said on a public forum, not like in a private group, even on this Facebook, but with a public audience on a live stream, you know, for any child to hear. Okay, kids aren't supposed to have Facebook, but let's forget about those formalities, okay?
Right.
Any of those kids could hear it and say, oh my gosh, really? This man who gives me a high five every day thinks I'm from Satan, you know, and he thinks I am not valid and I'm not worthy for life, you know, whether Muslim or not. I mean, he spoke about people whose parent, you know, supposedly he feels that the parents of the Olean City School District have no urge to get up and work. You know, all of those statements really bothered me. But yeah, to go back, he didn't just say about his personal religious beliefs. Anyone outside of Christianity is not living the straight path, or, you know, if that's what he wanted to talk about, his religious views, you know, he could have said something like, you know, we believe the truth is through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, etc. Right? but he didn't. He specifically said, these people are outside of God. These, this, this, and that, right? So that is what was extremely dangerous. Because as I said, it's teaching and breeding hatred, and it's giving dangerous thoughts as to what they could potentially go. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No worries.
It's kind of giving thoughts to kids or adults on what they should go and do.
Absolutely. I mean, you're hearing this from someone who is in a position of leadership, and I think that's incredibly crucial to recognize in this conversation.
Yeah.
What are kind of your thoughts and responses and reactions so far, Saad? I know that you're not a current student, but I know that these are places and hallways and people that you're familiar with, and you're obviously intimately familiar with being Muslim in Olean. So what are your kind of thoughts about this situation as it's unfolding?
Absolutely. And I just want to go back a little bit too. Both of us were talking about how, if you're a leader, you have a little bit of a bigger responsibility. There's definitely bigger consequences for what you say. You're representing, your entire organization, and you're, an official spokesperson. And that's not who we are. We're just, average people, Muslims who happen to live in the Olean area. And, instead of being a leader of this huge group of people, we're just the people in it. So overall, I was really shocked. I never expected to hear these kind of things coming from, the school's administration. Growing up, I went to Olean Middle School, and I thought that the person who made those comments was a pretty good guy. I didn't know that, he had views or beliefs like this. And making everybody feel included is really important. When you're the leader of a public school system, there's going to be students who are of all faiths, whether that's, Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, but other faiths as well, people who are not religious, people who are atheists. And your responsibility is to make them all feel welcome. I mean, this is not like a private school system that, is exclusively Christian. And even if it was, it should still be fostering an environment of inclusivity. To say that certain groups are outside the government of God and that they need help, to be prayed over is really hurtful. I think that I'm not a current student, but if I was a current student, I would feel less safe. I would feel less comfortable going to school, knowing that the people that are in charge and responsible don't really care about me. So that's just a little.
No, that makes total sense. And I think that there's kind of a conversation arising on social media. We've had a couple anonymous pages pop up really that have brought to light some of the issues that we're seeing right now on, at least on Facebook. And I think the conversation needs to be approached where, like, how do you be a leader who harbors these divisive beliefs and still purport to be a loving, love-based individual? Because I know Christianity is supposedly based on love, right? From what I know of Islam, it is absolutely based on the same principles in terms of loving. And furthermore, I think something that the Quran does, from my limited and neophyte study of the Quran, something that I've seen over and over is that the Quran actually provides like instructions on how to be loving, which is, I think, something that the Bible falls short on, right? There's a lot of ways in which, from what I've seen, like there's very, very practical ways to love your neighbor that are laid out in the Quran. So how do you think we should be viewing religious leaders that want to say they're all about love, yet are neutral in this situation? Like how does that come across to you as a former student, as a person who is a religious minority in the area, any of those? Like, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah. I think being neutral is not enough. When you see injustice and hate being spread and spewed, you need to stand up against it. And if you're simply neutral, if you're passive and you do nothing, you're complicit in that hate. You're basically indirectly saying that I'm okay with this, I support this. So Leah, I really just want to thank you that you were one of the first people that saw this and stood up for what's right. And you know, it takes some serious guts to do that. You know, there's going to be a lot of backlash. People are going to look at you funny after that.
That's okay, because my position in life has afforded me enough anonymity when I walk down the street that this is a moment where I need to utilize my privilege as a white person, my privilege as someone who's perceived male, my privilege as a religious majority. This is a moment that I should be standing up for. And I truly believe that my life I have benefited from my tangential experiences with Islam and with Muslim friends that I hold very dear. And so this is a moment where it wasn't a question for me to really stand up and have this conversation. So I'm both honored and humbled to be able to do this and have this conversation, you know. Angela, what do you think about that? Because, like, you know, we've discussed that you're coming from a standpoint of someone who is part of something, not leading something. What do you feel about this sort of like, you know, a spiritual apathy from leaders or complicity? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like for some reason I'm feeling a little more disgusted because I grew up in the church.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one reason I was glad that you agreed to come on this, was because you do have that dual practicality of someone who does, you know, have an understanding of Christian theology and has an understanding of Muslim theology. Not that we're projecting expert status on you, but I would really love to hear more about that disgust that's kind of coming up for you.
Yeah, I'm extra frustrated because I hear all these people talk about the love of Christ, right? The love of Christ and what Jesus would do, and that they want to pray for the pastor. I'm team this person, and all of that, as if there are two separate teams, as if Jesus didn't say, go out and preach the good news to the world, you know, as if Jesus in the Bible, okay, I'm going to Christianity at this point, as if according to Christians, Jesus did not die for everyone, right? The whole inhabited earth, right? In that viewpoint.
Yeah.
Not just the people who call themselves Christians today.
Correct.
But so why would there be team anything, first of all? Furthermore, why would the people then on the outside just kind of sit by idly and say, hello, why are you behaving this way? You know, you're supposed to be Christians. You're supposed to love everyone. You're not supposed to condone this kind of behavior. You know, what's going on? Wake up.
Absolutely. I think yeah, it is very frustrating to me, because to be honest, my faith compels me to do the things that I do, and to work to build intersectionality, and to raise conversations, and to, you know, conversations, no pun intended, but also to have literal conversations. My faith compels me to do this. And I don't understand how we can have purported religious leaders whose faith compels them to do anything other than speak up in the face of injustice. I'm just very confused about that, because I believe that love is an action verb, right? Like, as a part of speech, love is an action verb. It's something that requires action.
Right. And you cannot love God if you're not loving people. Like, that's the number one thing in marriage, even, right? Like, if you are not loving God, you cannot love your spouse properly. Like, you cannot tell me that you love God if you are not loving other humans. Like, so how can you be any type of leader and tell me you're telling me that Muslims are going to hell, or people with schizophrenia are in need of exorcism and are possessed by demons?
It's stressful. I see brewing in your mind, Saad? Are you just in agreement, or do you have some like thoughts coming up for you?
Just nodding right now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I just have to wonder, like, I mean, if the basis of Christianity is supposed to be love, from my understanding, gentle understanding of both Judaism and Islam, that is also a fundamental tenet. Furthermore, from what I understand of both Judaism and Islam, from people like I'm actively taking an interfaith course right now, so I'm engaging with rabbis and imams on a daily basis. So please understand, I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. But from my understanding, Judaism is very much about loving and very much does not draw a delineation between Jews, Christians, and Muslims, at least from the rabbis that I've been learning from, and from the imams I've been learning from, and from like I read some passages up from the Quran this week for my class that talk about like the unity of Abrahamic faiths. Like for those of you who aren't familiar, the story of Abraham is in the Torah, which is the Jewish scriptures. It is in the Bible, which is the Christian scriptures, and it is in the Quran, which is Islamic scriptures. All of these sacred texts share the story of Abraham. And for a fun little bit of context, the story, I was just reading a kind of an extrapolation by a rabbi. And in the story of Abraham, first of all, Abraham had mad wives. Like, I'm just saying, Abraham had mad wives and concubines. So I'm just saying, fundamental father of the faith, right? I'm just saying this, right? But there's this story where Abraham couldn't get pregnant with his wife, Sarah. And so Sarah says, bro, do it with Hagar, my slave woman or my concubine. Or I do believe that the most recent Islamic text I read recounted Hagar as a second wife. So a little bit more equity in title there. But at any rate, Abraham does the deed with Hagar, and a son is produced, right? And the son is Ishmael. And then eventually Abraham and Sarah are able to have a baby, and the son is Isaac. And what happens is Sarah's like, get rid of Ishmael, get rid of Hagar. And Hagar in Hebrew literally means the other. And so really what happens is Abraham and Sarah dismiss the other, right? They sacrifice the other and send them out into the desert. And then a couple chapters later, God calls Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, his only son. And I think that that's a very interesting commentary on othering, because be careful who you are sacrificing, because it could next be your own child on that altar. And I think that that's a very pertinent story that we come into this situation with, because like we as Muslims and LGBTQ people and Black people and people with mental health issues, we are the margins. I have certain areas of privilege that others don't, but we are the margins. And if we are willing to sit by, who's the next on the altar? Mm-hmm. I just read that before I came here, so I was coming in hot.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good. Thank you for that. I wouldn't have been able to do that so eloquently.
Oh, no worries. It was really interesting to me, though, because the entire translation of Hagar, the name Hagar, means the other in Hebrew. And I sure hope my friend Heather is watching this so she can check me on my Hebrew later, because she's a rabbi and she always is like, you're missing a word or something. But it's great because I learn something every time. But I think that what happened really with this public hate speech, and I'm sorry, there's no other name for it. And I'm also not sorry, because calling out hate speech doesn't make one hateful. That's the comment I've been getting a lot lately. But when you speak out against the other, you speak out against all others.
Yeah, so something I was just writing down, because it made me think of when we were just talking about the silence of others. Mm-hmm. It made me think of a quote by MLK, mm-hmm. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think Olean is a small enough town too that we've all, in one way or another, noticed the silence of at least one friend.
Yeah. Or a silence of someone we had previously looked up to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or respected. And Saad, I had a question for you. And you touched on it a little bit. You said if you were still a student, you wouldn't feel safe right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, would you then start to like question in your mind about every teacher? Because he said that the congregation was full of educators that have infiltrated the educational system in Olean. What do you think, how do you think you would feel? Because you've only graduated, what, how many years has it been? I'm getting old.
4 years.
4 years, okay. Yeah, so 4 years ago. Let's go back like 5 years, okay? You're a senior in high school. Let's imagine this happened then. What do you think you and the other seniors would be doing about this? Like, how do you think you'd feel?
I think I'd feel pretty alone. You know, I think I don't want to like draw any conclusions, and this could be wrong, but I think that like the majority of Olean high school students are probably like Christian, and therefore, you know, based on those comments, part of the government of God. So, you know, I would feel really excluded and separated. You know, you mentioned that there are other educators that are part of that congregation that have, you know, infiltrated the school. And I would really just not feel safe because, you know, I'm a minor, and these are the people who are responsible for my safety. Yeah. And they don't really respect, you know, how I'm different as a person, and they don't see me, you know, as an equal. So I think that would really hurt a lot. Another thing is I'm not sure, you know, whether the school has had any official statements, but, you know, like it seemed like at that meeting last Tuesday that the Board of Education was like sitting quietly while there were hateful people chanting and screaming, trying to silence us speaking out against this injustice. So it seems like the Board of Education was complicit in that. I mean, they made it really difficult for people to show up. You had to register in advance, and, you know, saying something in a calm and respectful way is one thing, but behaving like a child and screaming over people, you know, I would think they probably should have been removed, but they weren't. So that shows you that the official, you know, board that's in charge of the school district is okay with that. Hey, I don't know if there's been any, you know, official statements or anything like that. But yeah.
The only official statement is that there is no official statement.
Yeah.
I do believe that Superintendent Rick Moore did say that he feels like the public concern has died down, to which I hope there is a very real awakening of the illusion of that. But I also think that you're exactly right. Like, there was an air of complicity, and to be fair, I have to admit that when the second speaker got up, who was a pastor, self-proclaimed pastor of an unaffiliated church, who doesn't have school kids in the school district or doesn't pay taxes in the school district, the person got up and pulled a copy of the Constitution out of the Bible, which seems to exemplify the problem that we're having anyways, and proceeded to preach about religious freedom. In that moment, I did in fact stand up and turn my back in silent protest. And I will absolutely own that action, because I will absolutely own not being complicit to that message. At some point later in the 3-minute speech, like a 10-second limit was announced, and someone from the crowd, I think they were on on the side that I was on, started counting
on
down.
our side of the wedding.
Yeah, our side started counting down from 5 to the end. But then as soon as that happened, like, that stopped, right? Like, there was not a continuation of this, and it was a very different air. And I'm not afraid to own that happening, you know. And unfortunately, there's not one video of continuity with all the speakers. I tried to take one, but I was unable to. I've obtained an audio clip, and I know that there are some other clips of other speeches going around, but like, there's no one compilation of them, right? So, but there was when, you know, the person after me spoke and there was no heckling, right? And then when I spoke, there, like towards the end, there was screaming and hollering from a very specific group of five people, one of whom is a local pastor, and proceeded to scream my birth name as an insult in a derogatory manner towards me. I don't think that you can feign neutrality in that situation. Angela, you were at the school board meeting, right?
I was there. Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was the feeling on the ground as a person who does wear a hijab, who is Muslim, and who is a parent of Muslim children in this school district? What have your children experienced? What have you experienced as a Muslim parent? What was your feeling of personal reaction in that moment of the school board meeting?
In that moment, I felt like it was just a joke. It was definitely a joke. It did not feel like a group, a board meeting of adults at all. It was not professional at all. They did have the option of extending for 15 minutes or however, right? It was a total of 15 minutes, I think. They could have extended. Why on earth did not one of those board members stand up and say, okay, let's extend, rather than allowing that kind of like mockery? It was, it just wasn't professional at all.
Agreed.
And to watch again, someone who calls themselves a leader to stand there and just continue to yell out things like they were doing. It was archaic. Really, it was. There were people in the audience who were actually videotaping as well and saying choice things. And I didn't want on their videos because the things they were saying. It was just really embarrassing, to be honest. It was really embarrassing. I was embarrassed for everyone because of the actions. It just wasn't a board meeting. Not at all.
Yep.
And I didn't speak, you know, I've said it already in a couple different threads online that, you know, I called the superintendent. I called him. I had a long conversation with him. He was very pleasant. I'm not saying that he wasn't.
Yeah.
He was great. I don't know him on a personal level, but he seemed like he was pretty nice. He said that he actually told me a personal interaction that he had with the one Muslim woman that used to work at the school, who she had come from Bangladesh and she was looking for a prayer space in school, and she had been wandering around, and luckily he was a little bit cultured because he knew she was looking for a prayer space, and, you know, not like the cafeteria or something, he said. So he was able to offer her a space to pray. And anyway, so he told me that basically the things that I wanted to speak on seemed like it was going to be a bit redundant, you know, because of the 4 people that were already signed up to speak, and there was limited time. Each person was only given 3 minutes to speak. So, you know, that was it. So 4 people were signed up to speak, and nothing was said. I don't know. Basically, all that was talked about, because it seemed to then be generated basically around attack on Christianity. And that's not at all what this is about. Not at all.
It didn't start as this and it's not ending as that. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. This is a reaction now to a person in authority. Again, what I said in the beginning, a person in authority who happens to be the leader of, you know, an elementary or middle school district, right? He's a leader of kids, like who's supposed to make kids feel safe, like Saad said, you know, not feel singled out, not, you know, you want to know that you can go to him for anything. Like, Saad, I'm going to ask you again. Even though this person, he's your principal, and even though he was saying it in church and not at school, you wouldn't be able to separate that in your mind as a student, right? If you saw it on Facebook.
Absolutely. And, you know, just because he's outside the school setting doesn't mean he can just say whatever he wants.
Right. You wouldn't be able to compartmentalize that as a student.
No.
No.
I think it's really interesting here. This is a trend I've noticed lately in American discourse as well, as people in positions of social power, people who possess social capital by proxy of their social location. So people who are more in the center than the margins, right? It could be white, it could be Christian, it could be male, it could be cisgendered, it could be literate, it could be able-bodied, right? But people who are in the center want to simultaneously say that, you know, like isms are dead, racism is dead, sexism is dead, homophobia isn't real. But then also, as soon as you question the practical outcroppings of the things that they say, immediately they pick up the narrative of being a victim of hate. I have to ask you this, Saad, because you happen to be a person who is like Muslim, but also brown. As a person who historically it has been marginalized in our society, what does it feel like to hear like a straight white Christian male say that they're being attacked when you've lived the life that you've lived?
Yeah, you know, growing up in school, being called a terrorist every day, being called Osama, you know, definitely experiencing a lot of bullying from that. I think it's interesting. I'm not like an expert on psychology or something, but, you know, I guess somebody had been characterizing it as an attack on Christianity. It's weird how a lot of the times, you know, in like interpersonal relationships, like, you know, one-on-one, the person who's actually the abuser will turn around and claim to be the victim.
Always.
Strangely enough. Yeah. They'll say that they're the ones who are the victim, even though they're the ones who are the abusers. And that just makes everybody leaves everybody feeling confused, I think. Again, I'm not an expert in psychology or something, but I've noticed that.
No, right. That's okay. That's an absolutely astute observation.
So you received a lot of those types of remarks in Olean?
Oh yeah, every day, even a couple days ago. I mean, it doesn't stop. And I'm sure that we can talk later about, you know, Mrs. Rose, I don't know if you've had any problems, discrimination, or, you know, you wearing the hijab. But I guess I'll just say real quick, a few weeks ago, my family and I were walking down the street. We like to take walks together. It's good exercise and good family time. Down North Union Street, and my mom wears the hijab. It's completely her own choice. And not just one, but I think 2 or 3. So like first, we were walking down, we just started, and a couple of teenagers walked past us and started screaming like some fake, like Arabic, like, blah, 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 like, you know, some kind of, it was meant to demean us and make us feel excluded. And I was really angry, but, you know, my dad told me to calm down. They're just some stupid kids, whatever, you know, they don't know how to behave yet. So we keep going down. Now we're like by JCC or like by State and Union. And there's a car full of people who were screaming something at us again. And I knew that this was because we were brown in a white town and my mom was wearing a hijab. And that doesn't really make us feel safe, right?
Not at all.
No, that's so incredibly disheartening to me. And there is no room in this conversation for me to center white guilt, because that's not the point of this conversation. But it's just so disheartening to me, like knowing you as a person that as I do, knowing you tangentially through my kids, like it's absolutely heartbreaking, and it's absolutely being tolerated. Moreover, there is no neutral in this situation.
It's being encouraged by a Christian pastor
Yes.
who is supposed to encourage love, love, acceptance.
I don't even have, like, I never don't have words. That's kind of my thing. Most days, all I have is words. And I just don't even know what to say because I can't understand how people can try to even make some sort of claim that you can be neutral in this situation. The thing about religious language, the thing about religious speech, and this is an idea that I'm stealing, so I'm going to cite the author. Dr. Rachel Mikva is a rabbi and a professor of mine, and she authored a book entitled Dangerous Religious Ideas. And her thesis is that all religious ideas are dangerous religious ideas. And that is why each of the Abrahamic faiths, which she's an expert in, each of the Abrahamic faiths has built within it deep self-critical methods so that each person who partakes in a religious practice can first be self-critical so as to not blindly wield the power of God as a club, right? And I think it's disheartening to see people fail to embrace the self-critical practice that you are supposed to have as a person of faith, moreover, as a leader of a faith community. Because right now people are wantonly brandishing the word of God and God's authority and religious ideas, and they're using them to promote hate. There's no neutrality, only complicity.
Yeah. Okay, so that's exactly what happened at that board meeting. The last pastor that spoke, I think? No, the third, excuse me. The third person, first pastor. They quoted, which one was it? Was it Romans 1?
Oh yeah, Romans 1.
And said that that's all that happened. That's all that this is about, is that some pastor in his private church wanted to worship in a way that he wants to worship and wanted to talk to his congregation about Romans 1, which supposedly speaks on homosexuality and how it's unacceptable. That is not at all what this is about. And it is not up to them to interpret what God meant. You know, to take, okay, again, I am no scholar, okay, on any script, but I know that the languages have been changed loads of times. And just what you were just saying, like they are playing God, so to speak, right? And taking what they want out of it and pushing it into the minds of the people in their congregation. And again, it had nothing to do with that at all. It wasn't just about Romans 1. That's not at all. And that's the thing too. There was this Olean Times Herald post yesterday. And I think that is what the community is understanding as well. As again, that it's some attack on Christianity and that people have the right to worship in a way that they seem fit and to believe that, you know, what they deem as their truth. Of course they do. This is not it at all.
Yeah. But that's not meant for the school systems. And when you are a representative of an institution, when I worked for McDonald's, when I worked for the YWCA, when I worked for any social work agency that I was a part of, up to and including administration and management, there was an understanding and there was an explicit clause in our contracts that said your representation of this business, of this institution. And I'm not, you know, it wasn't like we can't control what you're going to say, but it was, you have to be willing to accept the responsibility that no matter where you will go, especially in a small town, that parentheses is mine, no matter where you go, you're representative of this organization. And we can't say what someone can post, but we can say that you can't post and propagate stuff that is counter to the organization. And the theme of the Huskies, from what I hear, is everyone pulls the sled. All the Huskies pull the sled. What about the Muslim Huskies?
Right.
I don't know. I guess I just don't see where there's room for neutrality in this issue.
Yeah, can you imagine when we worked for the YW?
Oh,
If we would have posted something like anti-abortion
nope.
on our personal Facebook page and made it to a public audience,
Yep.
we would have definitely been spoken to.
Absolutely.
And we are not any leader of any
Nope.
sort. We were just social workers,
Yep.
advocates, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. We didn't even know each other, but we both happened to work in those places.
I know, it's so wild that we did, and we didn't like, didn't overlap. It's kind of funny, but.
No, yeah, exactly.
What?
But I just was thinking about this when you just said that about social media policies. Don't the students of Olean have a social media policy like about bullying and stuff?
Sure do. Yep.
But the administration doesn't?
One of the ever so courageous students that spoke at the student protest last week actually read the student policy that they have to sign. And they said, where is the policy for teachers? And
Yeah.
I think that voice is coming from the students. That voice is coming from the students. They saw this. This is real. Furthermore, as a parenthetical side note, while I like big words, sorry, the more syllables, the more fun. While we were at the student-led protest with students anywhere from 4th to 12th grade up to alumni speaking, a grown man stood across the road on the corner of the street and felt so emboldened as to scream, "You are nasty. You all are nasty. You're nasty. You all are nasty," over and over again at a group of students. The kind of rhetoric that is being put out in the public has tangible side effects. That behavior being part of it. People sitting outside the school board meeting and yelling at students to the point that the student resource officer had to step in. That behavior is being accepted.
Oh,
that is what? Oh, after
what happened after the meeting?
Yes, because that followed out into the street. And when after I was done speaking, the environment in the room was incredibly hostile and incredibly tense. And so my ever so wonderful partner looked at me and said, "We need to make sure people are safe." And so we decided to quietly leave, not as an act of protest, but just simply that portion of the meeting was over. We also knew that the school is completely screwing over our teachers right now. And the teachers were also there in protest, trying to gain a voice for a fair contract, which I think is another travesty for another video, because the teachers deserve better. We decided to leave and get our folks, like the folks that were looking to us for guidance, to just leave and diffuse the situation. And instead, when we went outside, we were followed outside by the group of people that was up in front screaming and yelling during the end of my speech, screaming and yelling over Rick Moore, screaming and yelling over the gavel banging, screaming and yelling over anything that was being said. And so we went outside, and then they came outside and then sat by the door and proceeded to yell at people and try to engage people, to the point where I walked over and I just looked at folks that were there and I was like, it's not worth it. This behavior isn't going to change, and we're not going to be able to change it. And it's best for our own safety and interest if we just walk away. These people kept screaming. This pastor kept screaming my birth name, which is not my legal name, screaming it as an insult the whole time. Another child of one of the people that was screaming in the meeting was calling people trannies, gay bitches, F slurs, all of these things as they were trying to be outside of the meeting, to the point where Officer McGraw had to step in. And kudos to Officer McGraw for diffusing the situation, because he truly did a good job, and he was absolutely there to protect the students. And I have to applaud him on that. And he came up afterwards to make sure that the students were okay and everything like that. So good on Officer McGraw, and thank him for his service in that moment. But the situation followed outside the meeting. So what message is being sent to the community? The message that it's okay to behave like that. The message that it's okay to berate a brown family who has someone wearing a hijab on them when you're driving down North Union Street. The message that you can pull off someone's hijab in school, or you can tell them they can't wear it because, like, oh, boys don't wear the hijab. No, I know that's a story that you've shared with me. there are numerous stories of Islamophobic behavior. And when I say phobic, I cringe, because it's not phobic, it's a choice. It's not a fear, it's a choice.
Right. Yeah. At this point, I mean, you have a choice to do some of your own research. Everyone has the internet these days. Like, you can go beyond what you were told after 9/11, right?
Yep.
And do your own research to find out who did what, who does what. Sada, I'm so sorry that you guys experienced that. It's not okay. And you made a good point too when you said that, well, when you brought up that you didn't know if the school made
a statement or like a response.
Made like a formal statement yet, because they haven't.
Yeah.
And that the Board of Education at that meeting didn't even say anything. They didn't stop people from behaving that way. Mm-hmm. So that shows you that they're not caring. It's kind of like a joke.
Yep.
They don't care whatsoever. And could you imagine if it was the other way around? Can you imagine if someone at the mosque said something like that?
Can you imagine if an imam said, or really any Muslim, because they're not willing to see any
Muslim, not even the leader.
Any Muslim, not even looking for a leader, just any Muslim. If you were to say, right, if you were to pop off and be like, Christians are outside of the government of God, how quickly would you be assaulted? Would your job be notified? Would the school board be notified? How quickly?
Right.
How long would it take for someone to drop religious slurs?
Right.
I mean, how long would it take, not just for me to be assaulted by some random person, some hateful person for saying that, but maybe even by the government. So, I mean, like the public school is part of the government, right? Mm-hmm. And, as a Muslim, any Muslim, if they were to make comments like Christians are not part of the government of God, homosexuals are this and that, I'm pretty sure they would be like designated as a terrorist and
we're radical.
Prosecuted. Like the FBI would be right there. These are terrorists planning an attack against non-Muslims. Like that's how that gets characterized. It gets twisted. So when a minority does it, all of a sudden they're a terrorist. But when like the majority, like a cisgender white Christian male says something like that, they become the victim, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. They're the victim. Yeah.
Crazy double standards there.
That's so incredibly accurate. And because of my position of privilege, I didn't even consider that, but you are absolutely correct. The Patriot Act was designed for that sort of stuff, right? Like that's horrifying, because it's not just that there would be social consequences for you. There could very likely be legal governmental processes enacted against you. That's horrifying.
Yeah, you go for your trip and all of a sudden you go to board the plane and you can't. And you don't even know why. Like seriously, that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I was just going to say that U.S. citizens, like American citizens, maybe they've made like say for example, Joel Witcher chose to have some personal beliefs and express them on, a live stream that were kind of hateful. So maybe there's some extremist Muslims out there too. They went on YouTube and they recorded some hateful stuff saying that Christians are bad, Jews are bad, whatever, right? Extreme views. These are US citizens. They left the country on a vacation and they were drone striked. They were not part of a terrorist organization. They were hit by a missile and they were killed by the US government. So yeah, I just wanted to add that real quick.
No, I mean, thank you for adding that, because it's incredibly true. And there's a permanent othering of people who are Muslim, especially, right? Whereas you're seen as like your skin color or your religion first, and you're not seen as American when there's a damn American flag in your room, like I saw it. But there's this perpetual othering, and then we allow and on some level are complicit in championing voices that would continually other you, and not only other you, but would empower people to commit acts of aggression towards you. Like, how is this not making sense?
let me give you another example. So I walked into an ice cream shop recently, and as soon as I walked in, I don't know if it was the way I was dressed or the way I looked or what, I was dressed kind of nice. I was wearing a polo and some nicer pants. And this guy comes up to me and he says, "Oh, you must not be from around here. You must be from out of town. Welcome to Olean, blah, blah, blah. Olean's real cool." And like, I grew up here, right? And, growing up here as a second generation Pakistani immigrant, it's hard because you feel like you're not really part of, like if I go back to Pakistan, I can't really speak Urdu that well. And I'm obviously like an American and have some American cultures and values. So I don't feel like I'm part of that community. Mm-hmm. And in my own hometown where I grew up, I attended the schools. I walk in and somebody says, "Oh, you must not be from here. You look like you're from somewhere else," just based on the way I look. Mm-hmm. And that makes me feel like I can't be accepted here either. So, I'm kind of just floating around in this vacuum.
That's so incredibly frustrating for me to hear, because like I've had moments of that, of sort of feeling like a person without a flag, being a person who is LGBTQ and Christian, and my entire culture, like in the way that people can be culturally Muslim or culturally Jewish, I was culturally evangelical Christian. And suddenly my culture I was not allowed to participate anymore the moment I came out, but I wasn't gay enough for the gays and I wasn't Christian enough for the Christians. And I experienced all of that while having white skin, right? And so there wasn't an immediate visual cue. And I can only imagine what that feels like to be like, bro, I belong here. Like, where am I from? Oh, like, whatever, like 121 North Union Street or whatever. I don't know who lives at 121, but like, that's where I'm from. Mm-hmm. That's absurd, man.
Maybe we can spend a few minutes. I know this conversation was supposed to be about Muslims and maybe those comments, but as a member of the LGBT community, I'm definitely a strong ally. He also made comments saying that homosexuals and people who are anything except for cisgender and straight are outside the government of God. And think about how many students are, in the school systems who are struggling to figure out their sexuality, and their sexual orientation or their gender. And that can be so dark, so depressing. They can go through some serious mental health issues because of that. And you have their principal. Middle school is like a big time for people to figure that out. And you have their principal telling them that they hate them.
It is. Absolutely. That's actually part of what we were protesting 3 years ago when this exact same thing happened 3 years ago. Same thing happened 3 years ago. And we consulted with some lawyers and we came up with a plan to not to infringe anybody's free speech, but to simply free students from the potential damage of this speech being leveled at them by a school administrator. And the plan was completely a-religious. It was completely amoral. It was simply a plan to protect students. And part of that plan was the creation of a gay-straight alliance at Olean Middle School. That did not happen. Come to find out this year, now that I know some more context, perhaps we know why there was no gay-straight alliance in the middle school. But furthermore, our Project No, our sex ed education for our students was made in the 70s. There is a public health crisis that the school is actively contributing to because we are not teaching people who are not cisgendered, who are not heterosexual. We're not teaching them how to be physically safe. We are not creating an attitude of openness and understanding by simply teaching equity. And people will say right away, well, middle school students are too young to learn about this. No, they're not. There is curriculum that starts in first, second, and third grade where you can talk about bodily autonomy. You can talk about respect for others. You can talk about healthy relationships. You can talk about all of these things. And the Olean School District adamantly avoids providing any equitable, safe sex education to our students under the guise of religion. That's absurd. And like you said, Saad, middle school is where it's happening. We had multiple fourth graders get up at that protest and speak. Fourth graders having to lobby for their own rights.
Yeah.
9-year-old children.
9-year-old children having to hold a megaphone and request that they be treated with dignity and respect in their school systems. I don't even know how you follow up that concept. Like, how? And I think that, man, I just don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that we can't give up. I don't know what the answer is, but I know that we can't do it on our own. I do know the answer involves all of us working together, right? All of us. Because as a person who is of all of my intersectional identities, I recognize that there is no justice for me unless there is also justice and equity for you as a brown man. There's also justice and you for Angela as a single mom with neurodivergent children who is a hijabi. Like, there is no justice for any of us until there is justice for all of us. And I think that it's just incredible shame that we're having this conversation in 2021.
It is a shame. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's absurd. So I'm just checking our comments right now to see if anyone had any real questions. So people, someone said we will straight up cancel celebrities and politicians for their words. They have the right to say them, but people also have the right to be fired for them and to not vote for them, et cetera, et cetera. I think the thing with cancel culture is people don't get a chance to learn. But I think it's an interesting intersection here because the Olean School Board has been presented with the chance to learn and has actively they did not fail to, they chose to not act in sincerity and authenticity. They did not fail to, they chose to. So they were provided with an opportunity to learn and they chose not to. And now our students are still suffering from the same issues 3 years later after the school board chose to not act.
I would love to hear more about what happened 3 years ago because I'm not informed about it, but I just wanted to add a little point. So private companies and private organizations, like, for example, Fresh Fire Worship Center, or we could say any private company, they can come together and create an organization or corporation that does not have to be held to the same standards as the government or as education. So my point is that private companies will all the time dismiss and fire executives and board members for behavior and comments that they made outside of work, right? If they did something objectionable, they're immediately fired or they step down if they're an executive or board member. And that's just the standard for private companies. Private companies are not legally obligated to create an environment that respects, like the government and education systems are legally obligated to create an environment that's accepting of all, students or people, regardless of religion, sex, identity, gender. And they haven't dismissed this person.
Yeah, no, they haven't
even spoken on it.
Yeah, they haven't spoken on it. They haven't dismissed the person.
Now I'm caught up on that.
Angela.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Go. You.
Now I'm stuck on that. Thanks, Todd. They haven't even spoken on it. What the hell?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No.
What the heck?
Let alone private companies will, dismiss people for at the hospital, if somebody is not necessarily saying anything racist or is just acting erratically, they'll just be dismissed or fired. And this is the public school. They need to be held to a higher standard. You can't say stuff like that. Infiltrated the school is where they take it level.
What if a Muslim said they were infiltrating the school system?
So bad. It'd be so bad.
Imagine, Saad, let's go infiltrate the school system.
Seriously.
No.
If we keep saying that the FBI is going to be knocking on our doors, we better be careful.
I know. Here comes the helicopter.
I know.
Right.
No,
So
I was thinking this exact thing when he was saying that. I was thinking, watch some marketing director of Nike talk about, Christians or just anything, they would be fired on the spot. Exactly, because no one wants that PR nightmare, right? No one wants it, but yet you have a school principal and the district has not even said a word on it yet.
No.
And he just said something about the hospital. So my sister-in-law said something to me the other day, right? She is a nurse, and she said, imagine that she was even just like on Facebook in her own page, and she was on there saying, you know what, you know, the stereotypes that were long ago, not the stereotype, excuse me, the horrible misperceptions about Black women not feeling pain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's say she was on there. She's a white woman. Let's say she was on there and she said that. I don't believe that Black women deserve the same medical treatment, and they don't need anesthesia because they don't feel pain, this, and that. And it got leaked. That information got leaked. People would be coming not only for her job, but they would be going to the state for her license.
Yes.
Her medical license.
Yes.
And you have a principal who said some horrible things. And all we're talking about is religious freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What is going on?
It's an incredible show of smoke and mirrors. And it's an incredible example of Christians cosplaying, or of politicians cosplaying as Christians. Someone said that, and I can't get it out of my mind, but it is literally politicians cosplaying as religious professionals, perpetuating this sort of stuff. And it's, I cannot get it out of my head, and I wish I could remember who it was to credit them, because it really provided such an apropos understanding of the situation. So I don't want to keep you guys too long. I could personally talk about this for the next 17 hours straight, but I think people might have some things to do. But someone in our comments did drop a really important question. So what did you want to say, Angela? Because I'd love to hear what you have to say, and then we'll go on to that.
Sorry, I just want to say one more thing in case any kids are listening.
Yep.
Okay. So the other night, all of you kids who put together the protest, and I was standing there with the Jolly Rancher in my mouth. Thank you to the sweet little boy who gave me my favorite watermelon Jolly Rancher.
Oh.
And you asked me if I would speak, and I was not prepared, but I want to thank you for letting me speak on your night. And I just want to tell you that you're incredibly brave for standing there on your school grounds in front of your administration, knowing that one of them said some horrible things, and you still stood up to that. And you know what is right and what is wrong. You know that you are worthy. And I am proud of you just as a community member. And I want you to stay strong and keep going. And even if I don't know you personally, I love you.
I love that. And that's so pertinent. And unwittingly, that leads me into what I'd love to kind of like talk about as we wrap up. Like I said, I could talk forever, but that's not the purpose of tonight. I want to share, as we wrap up, a little bit of an anecdote. And that is something that I want to be vulnerable about my own history. I realized, 12 or 13 years ago that I was a racist, because while I might not have intentionally harbored racist sentiment, I was complicit in a system that was based on racism. And some very, very loving friends explained this to me. And not long after that moment, I had an experience that really framed the rest of my life. I was in Barcelona, and I was at an Arabic-speaking Christian church. And I was deeply uncomfortable, and I didn't know why. And so what I do is, just a person who's like somewhat neurotic about their own inner life, I questioned myself, and I held a little bit of an interrogation of myself, like, why are you nervous in this moment? And I was happening in the moment. So I'm writing in my journal, and I realized, like, I wrote it before I realized it, that I had only ever heard Arabic on the news in reference to terrorism before that moment. And so there I was in a space with people who fundamentally were of the same religion as me, because they were Arabic speaking Christians. And I was so deeply uncomfortable because I was inadvertently like anti-Muslim. I was inadvertently, and that I was a product of my culture that I grew up in, right? Because I didn't read a book about, I didn't read a book about why Islam was bad or evil, but I ingested that. And I think that just as you cannot be passively not racist. You cannot be passively interfaith or intersectional. And so that is why I want to seek out conversations with people like you, Saad, and you, Angela, because it makes us stronger when we talk about these things. And so in that spirit, someone asked, who I believe is a really recent student of Olean, someone asked, where do we go from here? And so I would love to chat about that. I'm just going to say some real practical things, but then I would like to get both of your perspectives. So practically, in terms of where we go from here, I think we have to keep coming to the school board and demanding action and not pandering, real action. Because 3 years ago, they placated us. And we can't let that happen again, because we're just going to be back in the same spot. And it is downright abusive to leave children vulnerable to this same situation for a third time. So I think practically you have to get involved and go to the school board meetings. If you want to speak, the best way to do that is you have to message the school secretary, email the superintendent's secretary before the meeting and request to be put on the agenda. So that's a first practical thing. There is a group of community members organizing and holding meetings regarding how this strategize to proceed, and I will tag them in the comments. Mr. Timothy Sherlock will be organizing that, so if you're interested in getting involved, you can do that. That being said, that's the tangible things. And my personal commitment is to intentionally building interfaith connections and being actively interfaith and only, and that's what I'm seeking to do. I just spoke with the interfaith community of Olean, like Facebook page, to get involved, and I'm going to actively commit to that as a person. But what do you both think, as people who have drastically different social settings than I do? What do we do? Where do we go next, you know?
Yeah, so I would suggest getting together with other faiths. So in casual settings, you know, it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be, you know, in a worship setting. You know, you don't have to feel like you're going to offend your God, if you will. If you're going to do something that is not your truth, okay, but to be able to see that people, no matter what faith they are still real people and can be real friends. And so, you know, have coffee together. That group that I saw online, can you pin that group to people?
Yes, I will absolutely tag it. It's the Olean Interfaith Community. It is facilitated by the Presbyterian Church, who actually the Reverend at the Presbyterian Church did in fact speak out this Sunday in his homily about everything that's been happening in Olean. So I am attempting to screen grab that so I can share it. But I do want to make it an acknowledgement that Reverend Bruce in fact did say something on the matter, and I'm very appreciative of that. So, but I will tag the Olean area interfaith group so that people can get involved if they so desire.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about them personally, but it looked good. It's a group of interfaith people, right?
Yeah, I think it's kind of startup. So
yeah, I think that would be great, just to get together, have conversation, coffee, tea, have fun.
Absolutely.
What about you, Saad?
I'm not exactly sure. But just an idea I had is, you know, like maybe we can create like an interfaith or intersectional church, which is secular, not any particular religion, you know, has the underlying values of love and acceptance, and is really inviting marginalized communities, minorities, and people who are LBGT to come, even if they're not part of any particular religion, you know, and we can, you know, similar to some of these churches, we can have an event on Sunday where we have music and we have maybe somebody like you, Leo, speaking passionately of you know, words of love instead of hate. Why can't we do the same thing?
Absolutely. I agree 100%. That's actually my personal passion.
I love that.
If you would like to contribute, I have Conversations as a Patreon. We can make that happen. But that is actually the original design of Conversations, was to be that in-person interface. And we kind of were forced online because of COVID. But I am working to find some funding to perhaps make that a reality in Olean, because I think that's what we need, right? I think a large portion of what we need in the world today is community. And I think that's always been a function of religious gatherings. And I see no way that wouldn't help. That's like a quadruple negative, but there's no way that sort of gathering would fail to create change in our community. That's a way better way to say it.
I love what Saad just said, preaching love.
Absolutely. And like true love is a verb, and it bears with it action. And so if you're going to be about love, you have to actively be about love. I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Guys, this was an amazing conversation. I'm incredibly thankful to both of you for your presence. I'm incredibly thankful that you were both willing to speak up in an area that doesn't always really want to hear your voice or champion your voice. I believe that the voices of the margins are what always makes for a better society. And so I thank you for just blessing us with your knowledge and your time and your presence on this issue. I know that this video is going to reach a lot of people who might be unwittingly ignorant. And I mean that in a true sense of the word, like they want to know better and do better. And so I thank you for extending me the assumption of goodwill here. And I thank you for extending the assumption of goodwill to the people who are going to watch this video. I recognize that it was a conscious choice for you to be here. And I'm incredibly appreciative of your presence here and in my own life.
Thank you too, very much. Thanks for the invite. It was nice speaking with you too, Saad.
Yeah.
And Leon.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Hey man, we're going to do this together, right? Like no one of us can change anything, but together we can be unstoppable. If minorities stop punching laterally and start punching up, we can create change, and we can work to dismantle oppressive systems by using our unique intersectionality to really combat systems of oppression. So here's to, hopefully this conversation will spur us to a better way forward. And I thank you guys so much. I did tag the Olean Interfaith group in the comments down here. If you guys want to drop your links just to your personal pages, even if people just want to get to know somebody who is different than them. If you want to do that, that's cool. Feel free to drop your links. If not, that's totally fine too. But I look forward to hopefully a better, more actualized Olean after this conversation.
Inshallah.
Thank you guys so much. Everybody who's watched, thank you for your time and your energies. Please feel free to share this. Also, please feel free to check out the Conversations official page. This is by no means a membership ploy, but I actually do try to facilitate these intersectional conversations on a weekly basis. We are in between seasons of Conversations right now because I'm a very dumb person who thought I didn't need to do things in seasons, and I was fully committed to driving myself into the ground, apparently. But we've got some good things coming up. We have Black pastors, we have lesbian Black rabbis, we have gay imams, we have social justice workers working for Native American rights in rural America, all sorts of things coming up this coming season on Conversations. And if you need a place to be, we don't have a building right now, but we do have a space for you at the Conversations. So please let me know if you want to get more involved and check out conversationsofficial.com. Angela, Saad, have a great evening. Saad, enjoy your chicken wings. Angela, enjoy, maybe having one less kid in the house tonight, and I will talk to both of you very soon.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
This has been the Conversations Podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments, or just want to get involved, feel free to join the conversation on social media. You can find us at Conversations Official on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And please don't forget to rate, follow, and share this podcast. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.